Good afternoon, everyone. It's Andy here. Hope you're all doing well. So today's training session number 9, we are going to go through the owner's statements. So before I start, if you can just give me a quick yes, you can hear me via the chat system and the video is working. For those of you that are doing your first training session with us, your microphones are muted, your cameras are switched off, so you can only see myself. If you would like to ask a question, we have a Q&A section so that you can stop me as I'm going through and ask a question and I will respond. You can also discuss things in the chat window, and if you would like to speak and go through anything, then you can ask and we will unmute the microphone and we can chat directly. So they're the standard rules for the webinar. So in terms of today's session, I'm just going to give you a recap on what we went through yesterday in terms of the management tab, cleaning tasks, maintenance issues, call outs, emergency call outs, etc. How we then merge that into an invoice. And then we are now in a position where we can actually run our monthly statements. So if there are no questions, without further ado, we'll jump straight in. So what I'm going to do first of all, just go through some preparation before we look at the statements themselves. So I'm going to come into the reports. I'm not going to go into this in too much detail because this is going to be tomorrow's session. So I want to go into my financials report. Because I've got a lot of test data in here, I've had to try and so that we get some sensible data for the training session, I've focused it on one particular property. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at this month, and I'm going to show you something else in a second, just to remind you. And I'm going to look at a specific property, which is Sanctuary Cottage. And I pay on checkout, so I'm going to show you that in a second. So we're going to look at my checkout, I'm going to click book in detail. And we have got 4 bookings that are due to be paid to the owner. We've generated £15,980, and due to the owner out of that is £11,835. We've got a few discounts. Actually, this property has a small party discount set up. So the small party discount, what that allows us to do is just put a nice simple discount if there are less people in the property. So this property sleeps 8, and I believe if there's less than 6 people, it's a £50 discount. If there's less than 4 people, the discount increases to £100. So it's a nice simple way of just making a bigger property more affordable to smaller groups. So this just shows me what I'm expecting within my statements. This is what I'm expecting to pay. Now, what I can do from here is I can actually click onto this booking. Now, of course, I'm not expecting you to go through every single booking. So there's a couple of things that we just want to go through before we go through these bookings. So 2 things. How is my system set up? Because you will all have differences, I'm guessing here. You'll have slight variables. So if we go into my iPro Holidays and come into my financial statement configuration. So I am not paying my owners a deposit. This is my ideal recommendation. If you can get all your owners signed up to this contract, I believe you'll have the least stressful life, and you will be able to always have the guests' best interests at heart, but at the same time, you know that the owners are your bread and butter as well. So you're not going to side on the side of a difficult guest just to make your life easier because you know you're going to upset your owner as well. But this as a payment terms, you have all of the assets with you so that you can react quickly when there's a problem without having to argue with the owner. So no deposit payable. I'm going to pay my owners 1 day after checkout. So I'm actually waiting for the whole holiday to finish. And what I will do, even though I've set it to 1 day after, all that does is actually set the payment due date to the owner. But if I'm running my statement on the 1st of the month for last month, if they check out on the 8th of May, they will not get paid until the 1st of June or whenever you do that bank transfer. So just to be clear on that, the only way that you would pay them on check out is if you ran a statement every single day. And then it would work on the basis of, oh, Andy's due to be paid today, John's due to be paid tomorrow, But as you can imagine, from an administration perspective, that will be a nightmare because you'll have to run the statement 365 times or at least 52 times a year rather than 12 times a year. So I wouldn't recommend that. And I would work on the basis that you get paid one day after checkout, but on the first day of the following month. So the other thing that I've got set up, because I've got two brands in there, so this is my default company for task and bills, it's the default company for invoices, and it's the default company for statements. I'm not creating a blank monthly statement. So this is just a yes/no question. Do I want to produce a blank statement for the owner to say this month I don't owe you any money? That just means they get 12 statements every single year. Whereas if you turn it off, they may only get 6 statements because there was only 6 months of the year where you were due to pay them money. And then the last one I've got here is show future bookings. And this will show the owner what bookings you've got coming up that you're going to pay out in the coming months that are already in the system. And this one is going to be removed, so you can ignore layout 7. We're controlling that slightly different in the next release. So this just gives you a formatting, but we're going to control that slightly differently. So that's how I've got my system set up. The other thing for people that have teams, even if you don't have teams, this is probably a good idea because it gives you less room for maneuver and less flexibility, is making sure that your sales team, your customer services team are not able to go in and edit the prices to the owners or customize the prices, etc. So in our user profiles, if I look at my sales team or my reservations team, I've got it locked down so that in the bookings, they can view the financials, but they're not allowed to edit the financials, and they're not allowed to see what the owner gets as well. So that means no one can tamper with anything. No one can make an accidental mistake. Everything is controlled within the system, and therefore you're going to get less user errors each and every month. So there's a question that's come in. So Neil, I will answer that question when we get through to it. We should see an example where the owner owes us money. I can actually create an example, but we do track that, but not in a not from a complete accounting purpose, but it will show that the owner owes us money, and therefore we need to claim that off them. So when we send them the statement, it will show that they owe us money, and we can then choose whether or not we get that paid or we let it roll over. So I'll show you how that works as we go through. So that's how our system is, or sorry, my system is set up. Does anyone have any questions before I go through? Or is everyone happy with that setup? Everyone happy with their user permissions following on from our previous training sessions? Because as I say, those settings there are going to have a massive impact on your owner statements. Okay, so if no one's got any questions, I'm going to come back to my report and I'm just going to have a look at this booking. And we'll see a breakdown of how this works. So the booking has been paid in full. If I come into my payment sections, you'll see that the guest has paid everything and the owner is due to be paid on the 31st of May, 2,746. If I go into my management tab, you'll see that we had an emergency call out and we've charged £30 for that. And we had a departure clean and preparation. We had £50 for that. And the bill, we also had some house repairs. We had to fix the boiler, and we had to call out British Gas Home Care. So that was £100 charge to the owner. So that was that booking. And if I come on to my next booking, so this one we can see, again, the owner is due on the 31st of May. If I come into my management tab, we had a departure clean. We had no bills on this one at all. You'll see this one, there was a discount. So £100 came off the amount from the owner, which was agreed. That's how the discount was working for this particular owner. When we do a small party discount, it comes off their amount. So our commission was 25% on this one. And if I come into the payment section, we've got a breakdown here, and we've got the amount to the owner as well. And if I come into my management tab, we've got our clean. We've also got a new kettle that was added to this particular one as well. And then my final one, what we've done on this one, because this one is completed, so they checked out on the 2nd of May, we've got that they're due to be paid. Oh, I didn't change this back. Let me just change this back a second. So the other thing you can do, as we talked about yesterday, was you can set the payment schedule. So you can override the payment schedule. And what we've got here is we've got a damages payment. So if I go into my activity log, you'll see that security deposit refund, we did broken door and additional cleaning. So we actually put a charge against this particular guest. So we charged the guest £500, and we're actually paying £400 over to the owner as a credit payment due to the damages caused by the guest. So those are the 4 bookings that we're expecting to come through on our statement. Now, before I go into the statement, I just want to have a look at those. So if I come into my bills, and if we select my property, Sanctuary Cottage, oops. Okay, so there's my 2 bills that we added. So they're quite happily there. And if I come into my tasks, and if I just look at that one as well, there's my 4 tasks that were completed. And what happens is they will all get merged into my invoice, which we covered yesterday. So here's my invoice. And at the moment that's open, and it's got a breakdown of all the items and any tax that is applicable if we're making an additional revenue on those particular items. And then I come into my statements. So this will now merge the invoice and all that booking history that we've just seen on the reports into one financial statement. So yeah, in terms of, I'm not sure if you were on the original setup and configuration training, Neil, but everything can be configured in settings here. So you've got task types and you've got bill types on the left-hand side. So you configure the system how you want. We've given you a default list of things in there already, but you can update that however you want. And then it is from a drop-down list. And also it will come into the description as well. So if I now run this for Marie, who's the owner that I set up. So what we now see is we've got 5 bookings that have come into this statement. We've got a total booking value of 19,925. We're deducting £342 for expenses. Our commission is 5,043.75. The VAT on that is 998.75. We have got an advance payment as well, which I'll come back to. And we've got the closing balance there as well. So if I come into my statements now, we have got our bookings at the top. So how much money the bookings are worth, what the credit was that we actually took in. We have the damages payment. So as you can see, whatever I wrote in the reason why has come through on the statement. So that's why you have to make sure when using the summary boxes, it will, you are using not necessarily good English, but you know, it is going to be visible to your owners. So it has to be professional, and it has to be accurate as well. So that's one of the key things when you're using the comments boxes. You'll then see that we have all of our expenses. So the deductions, any VAT that's applicable within those deductions. So we've got an emergency call out, no hot water. You can see we had replacement items. So I created, so Neil, for your question, can you customize what's in the drop down list? I used a general category called replacement items, and then I typed in new kettle, and as you can see, it came out here. Then on the next one, I used a general category called house repairs, and then I typed in fixed boiler and call out charge from British Gas Home Care. So I gave specific details. So if I was to look at this now, I would know why that charge was. I'd also know which invoice it was related to, and also the booking as well from there. So you have a complete breakdown. Um, one thing I'm just going to revert back. Sorry, apologies. I just want to show you the breakdown in here so people know they're getting paid the correct amount at the end. So we can see that this booking, we had a pet. So there was £75 included within here for the pets. We also have the breakdown here of the accommodation, the pet, and an agreed discount of £100. And the same with this one here. And the same with this one here. So the owner knows, again, on the statement, yes, they're going to get confirmations and they're going to get all the information every time you do a booking, but you actually are just reminding them on the statement. So you're trying to stop those queries from coming in. Well, you're just trying to stop the queries coming in, or why did I not get paid this? Why was this booking different? Because it was applicable to a certain discount, and it might be a last minute discount, it might be a length of stay discount, it might be a special discount for 1 week, etc. So all these things that could be set up legitimately, of course, when they get their statement in, they're like, why did I give a discount for that? Why did you add this? Why was this not added onto the booking? So by having these little summaries, it reminds them of what was agreed at the time.
Andy, we have a question on the chat. It's on the chat, private chat from Kate Wright. Is that something that we can answer on call?
I think it is. Yeah, just give me 2 seconds. I'm just going to finish the walkthrough on this statement, and then I will address that question because it should be. It looks possible, but I'm sort of just glancing at it at the moment. Okay, so once we've got our expenses added, we then have the payments. So there's 2 things on this statement that have come through. Pet can be commissionable. It's entirely up to the setup. So pets can be commissionable and also can be VATable if there is VAT, if you've made a commission on it. So the VAT will come through on those ones. Again, with the test data, sometimes it may not be set up correctly. So I may have put that as non-vatable, which is why it's come through as non-vatable here. So I'll double check that in my own settings. But the payment history here, I've got a direct payment and I've also got the previous month statement, which was a zero value payment actually. So it has no impact on it, but we paid a direct payment for one of the bookings. So even if you are paying on a rolling month, for example, if you want to pay an owner in advance, you can do an advance payment against it and it will track through on the statements, so that you know when so you know that you've made the payment and also they know that they've been paid in advance and therefore they're not getting paid twice. So we actually have that functionality within our system. Another one which is more of an advanced feature, which we won't go through on this training session, but if you do need this feature, then I would reach out and we will do a video for you, or maybe do a separate call if there's enough people, is that if you allow your guests to pay the owners directly and you still want to use the statements, because we can do a really nice feature where, and actually this answers your question, Neil. The guest has paid the owner directly. So when you run the statement will show, rather than us owing the owner 11,144, the owner actually owes us 6,042.50, and we then track that payment. Once it's paid, we can mark this payment as processed, and we know that the owner's account is back in sync, basically back to zero, the opening balance being zero. So yeah, it's quite easy for us at the moment. This one has come through as a positive, and I will do another one slightly different with expenses on, and we'll see it as a negative balance and how that works within iPro. So the final section that we've got is the commission section, and this gives us a breakdown on the commission for the booking, commission for any extras, etc. And what we then have is we have our summary for this owner. So is there an opening balance to roll over from the last month? What's the total amount of money that we're taking? What's the deductions for any advance payments or previous month payments? What's the deduction for the commission and the taxes? What's the addition? So this one was actually a payment to the owner of 400, because we've collected the money off the guest and we now need to give that £400 to the owner. So this was a positive to the owner. We then deduct our monthly expenses. So therefore our total deductions was 5,984.50, which means we're going to pay the owner now £11,144. Exactly, Ricardo. So you can pay, you can handle a mixture, which is why I showed you the advance payment there as well. So even though you've got like a strict payment process, you can pay someone on an ad hoc basis, but also you can have 5 owners that you pay normally every single month, another 5 owners that you actually that the guests pay them directly, and therefore you're giving them a negative statement every month, which you're claiming your money back. You can quite happily run the two side by side, and it's actually controlled within the booking itself. That's the most important thing. There is another feature, but again, it's more of an advanced functionality, which I don't want to go into too much detail on this. But the branding allows you to do different things so as well, so that you could run a group of statements for one brand on one rule and another group of statements on another brand. The other option that you've got, and again, you'd probably only want to do this if you've got a small portfolio, is you could run an individual statement every single month rather than doing a group statement, which I'm going to show you in a second. Because if you've got 300, 400, 500 properties, you have to do everything on a batch mentality. Yeah, a booking source will allow you to filter your bookings and therefore control how you're going to pay them. So the other thing that I've got before I move off, I've got pay via Barclays. So I've got this set up to Barclays Bank, and we've got the account number in and we've got the sort code number in. If I go to actions, export Barclays file, this gives me a text file that will now allow me to upload that to Barclays, and they will pay Maria Tope her little bonus of 11,144, and she doesn't even know me, so she'll be quite pleased if I was to do that. But yes, you just simply upload that file, and that will automate it, and that would allow you to process thousands of payments in one go. If you don't have their bank files or bank account details, sorry, it will go on to pay via check, and there you would manually pay those however you actually pay them. So I'm just going to revert back to this question now, because I think that fits in nicely with the with what I was going to move on to next. So if you just bear with me 30 seconds. Okay, so actually this is a question from Kate. I thought it was going to be do with is the owner taxable? Can we tax the owner, etc.? So one of the things that we have within the feature, which I'm going to explain before I answer Kate's question, I'm not going to turn it on my system, but if you come into the owner section, so bank details, we put the details in here. So this will drive whether or not we can pay them via the bank file, the bank export. And non-resident tax exempt, what that will mean is every time you do a booking for this owner, you will not deduct any tax off them for the commission. So let's say, I'll keep it simple. I'm going to just use VAT. So it's 20%. So it's £1,000 booking, 20% commission. So it should be £800 that the owner gets paid. We then deduct the commission tax, which is £40, which means that the owner gets paid £760. If we turn that on there, for this owner, they will no longer get that tax deducted. So they will receive £800 from the booking, because they pay their tax to wherever they are registered. So that's what you would do to have your non-resident tax exempt status. Now, if you have owners that you have to treat differently, and therefore you are doing cash on arrival and paying them separately, then actually you probably want to exclude them from your statement runs, because that will include within your, if someone was to say, well, let me see all your statements that you've ran, because don't forget, every time you run a statement, you will get a cleared section here. And you will have a full history of all the statements there. So you could run this based on brand, and therefore you could have your tax exempt brand as an example and register their properties to that brand, and then you would exclude them from your statement run. So that would be a good way of doing it. If you're happy for them to be included within your statement run, but you just don't email them to the owner, then you would have to process those statements individually. So let's say I've got Celtic Haven, Ian Macklin, and Terry Hatch. I don't send them these statements, but I still run them. I would process those three individually first, process them, don't send the email, and then I would process the rest of my statements in one batch. So that's how you could handle it in that scenario. So hopefully that's answer your question, Kate. So Neil, yeah, in terms of the bank details, if you have permission to access the owner contact information, then you can edit the bank details. But it's again, you can control it via the user permissions. And the VAT question is to do with the commission tax, basically. So if they're a non-resident, it's pretty much the same in most countries, I believe, that if I'm where I'm registered to pay my tax is where I will pay my tax. So as an agency doing bookings on my behalf, um, you I need my full amount of money to pay the actual tax from my side at the tax rate of the country of origin, basically. So it won't be it's not the booking tax as in the full value of the tax. It is the commission that's been earned on that tax. So with the non-resident ones, you can process them automatically. It will just work exactly the same. All that happens is we just have the VAT column is gone on your statement. So if I come in and run this now for all of my so what I've now done, you'll see at the top here, I've got last statement run was on the 1st of April to the 30th of April. So I'm doing the 1st of May to the 31st of May. I've left the brand as any. So if there are a need for you to have multiple brands, you can run the statements per brand quite easily. You can either run it by individual, or if you leave it to any, it's now brought through all of my owners and it's given me the total amount of money that is due to be paid. So if I come into my statements now, we've got Beach Retreats. So Harry White, they've got pets. They've got a sofa bed use with linen charge. Christine Conyers has got pets. I've got my previous statement payments. And this one had an opening balance as well. And I also had some commission with some VAT on it. If I click on the next button here, so on the right-hand side, brings me through to the next statement. So this one was just an empty statement with an opening balance and a cleared payment. I then have my next statement, which this one has some credit claims against it. Also, I've reclaimed on this particular booking, I have reclaimed money for a cancelled booking. So we paid the owner in advance. The booking was then cancelled. We've agreed that the money is due back to us. So in that booking, 14480, I've actioned a reclaim, which is basically a bill. And that's now come through on the statement. We have the cancelled booking, we've got an arrival claim, we've got a departure claim, we've got replacement items, we've got a photo shoot charge that we've done. And then we've got as you can see on this one, it's reversed the commission and the tax charge because the booking was cancelled at the top. So this one is only going to be applicable if you pay your owners in advance of the booking starting or checkout, and something goes wrong that is the owner's fault, therefore they have agreed to pay you the money back, that's when you would use the reclaim feature. And I can go through each of these statements and see all the details. Now, if I was happy that everything was correct, what I would do is I would click process statements, and it now shows me a list of all of the statements we're going to process, and it will show me how much we're going to pay each of these owners. And what we do is we set the payment date here. So if I do the 1st of June, you have to imagine we're ahead. And I'm just going to say that everything is fine. Payment to owner. So we're going to pay the owner. If we wanted to process a payment from the owner, then we would obviously switch it over to here, and it would mark it that we were paid from the owner, bringing the balance back to 0. Okay, what I would recommend, if you have an owner that owes you money, you would actually process that statement individually, and I would make sure that you get paid before you process the statement, or you keep a track of it externally and just say, okay, we're going to say that they do owe it to us, and we're now tracking that they have paid us through another system. So by clicking submit, what the system is now going to do is going to go through and update all of those bookings to show that the owner has been paid. It's going to send an email to all of the owners with a PDF attached of their statement, and it will confirm once that task has been done, and then it will set the next statement due date as the 1st to the 30th of June. You can, so you can export all of this as a summary. You can also export the bank file as well, which I did skip over, so I'll have to show you again on the June one. And you can export each individual statement as well as if you want to, but there will be a PDF statement attached for all of these. All of these statements now are going to move into the cleared section. So if I come into my cleared section now, and if I look at the run date, so we ran this on the 20th of May. These are all the statements that were processed. And if I click on to edit, we can actually see the exact statement that was sent through to the customer. And I can export this as a PDF. I can print it. I can email it. So you always have all of the history within iPro. If I do a search now for my owner, so if I go to Marie, okay, so there's my statement. So we've got a complete breakdown here. If I wanted to go to export as PDF, I can have a PDF version of it. And what you've got is you've got your statement, you've got the dates, you've got the company details or customer details with their contact details and your telephone number. Oh, sorry, vice versa. This is the iPro details, sorry. And then this is the customer details. I've put the same address in both. We've got the phone numbers, we've got the owner email, and then on your PDF, you get a nice summary. So you have the last statement balance, history of any payments made, total value of bookings for this particular month, value of your expenses, value of your commission, including VAT, any deductions, how much are they going to receive today in their payment, and then it's a complete breakdown. So exactly as I showed you on the UI, you have the full history of all the bookings, all of the breakdown of the bookings, all of the expenses breakdown, etc., etc. So I've just got a couple of questions to catch up on. So yeah, in terms of, as I say, local tax rules are different country to country. So the idea is you have the choices with an iPro of what is applicable to your business. So if you want, even if you're charging non-residents owners the tax as normal, you just don't turn that switch on. It's as simple as that. Okay, so I've got another question here, which is slightly different, which is in terms of showing the taxes that are due that are going to be paid on behalf of the owners. This one we actually go through on the reports training session. So I will come back to you on that one tomorrow, Lorraine. And in terms of the summary, yes, we had the summary on the first tab. So you can see all of your payments that are due on the first tab, and then you can break it down by statement by statement. And if you wish to hide the commission on the statements, yes, that is possible. You can just show the net prices. And I've got a question here. So in terms of, yeah, these statements are only there if you want to track everything through and pay your owners automatically. Thoroughly recommend using them. But again, they don't replace your automatic notifications and workflows. So I've got a question here saying that they send their details through to an accountant. You can actually have, your accountant can have a login to iPro, for example, and you could then give them a customized view of a report, so that they can get the data in real time if they wanted to. Alternatively, you can give them a automated email that's sent to them with the booking details, with just the information that they need to know. You can trigger different things for different owners. So you can actually offer more choice to the owners, which of course you could charge for as a service as well. So there's actually a lot of things that you can do within the automated workflows that are applicable only to that property or that owner, or that region. You can just define it within your automated workflows. Again, the brands will also control certain things. Yeah, the negative statements, if they owe you money, I'm going to do an example now actually, so you can see how it works. I'm going to go and do the June run, and we'll have we'll have a negative statement in there as well. So I'll show you how that works. Okay, so let's come out of here, and let's go and look at our reports. So we'll do based on checkout for next month. Okay, so I've only got a few bookings in there. So let's go to property list. Okay, so we've added our booking. It's paid in full. Just clean that up at the same time. This one's got quite a few. Okay, so we've got our booking. It's paid in full. The property, the owner is Sean Hop. So I'm just going to quickly tidy something up while I'm here. Okay, so I'm going to go and now create an invoice for this property. So if I go to add task, we have actually got a task here for that one. So I'm going to add that one on. If I go to bill, don't know what that one is, so I'm not going to add that one on, but I'm going to do a new bill here. You'll see that you can add in your list of suppliers, bill type. So I'm going to do replacement items. Okay, so we purchased XYZ, and total cost of that was 2,000. And we'll put the date in as the 3rd of June. and we'll add another bill. Sorry, new bill. And we're going to do it in as labor cost. Okay, and that one actually should be 0,500 because it would all be taxable. Okay, so I've now got my invoices added to Yeti Retreat, which is Sean Hop. So if I now come and run my statement for June, you can see that it's defaulted to June now. The last one was run the 1st of May to the 31st of May. So if I click search, this will compile all the statements. So the other thing you'll notice is that you can actually run your statements in advance as well. I could actually look and think, well, okay, what's our liability from now to the end of December? What do we owe based on the bookings that we've got? And it will give me a total value that we are due to pay out by the end of 31st of December based on the bookings that we have in the system to date. Now, if I go back to 30th of June, so sorry, I'm just going to go back onto this question because it's really important. And tasks and bills, the only difference between a task and a bill is that a task is something that you track through to say, has it been done, or one of my team are going to do that particular task. You could quite happily use everything as bills, because a bill is either a credit note or a charge to your owner. So cleaning could well be a bill, but if you want to actually have a cleaning task that you allocate to one of your employees, one of your housekeepers, and then track it through the management module, it needs to be a physical task, whereas a bill is for everything else. You know, whether or not you've called out an expert, air conditioning expert, they give you a bill, you add their bill to the system as a bill. But the task would have been your manager going out to identify that you needed to get the expert in to fix the problem. So the task and bills are both very applicable. As you saw on the last screen, I built the invoice on the fly. So the invoice can be built in real time, and I would just add bills to it, basically, like I did in that particular mini session. And then when I run the statement, that all of what I've added to that invoice will come through on my statement. So you can see I've got Sean Hop here. And if we go to our statements, so I've got Sean here. At the moment, total deductions, I need to put a lot more in my deductions. So what I'm going to go back and do now is just update this invoice again. So again, I'm just going to show you. That's why they haven't come through. I've got the wrong date on here. Sorry. There we go. That's my mistake. I forgot to change the invoice date. There we go. Thankfully, it was something simple. Stupidity on my part. Okay, so now we've got some data, good data coming through for what I was expecting. So we now have a negative total due to the owner is minus 1,300. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put this back to any, click search, and that will generate all the statements. So we now have a range of statements again. So there's all my owners that are getting paid this month. I can export the bank file. I can export all the ones that we're doing via manually, so I can export those to Excel. And what I can then do is I can click process statements, and you'll see here that we have a So for Sean, payment to owner, and then we could actually say payment from owner, I should say. How much is he going to pay us? I forgot to double check actually, so let me just cancel that. Okay, so there it is there. So if we do process statements, so from Sean, we've got, and I'll get rid of those. That would then actually confirm that we've received 1,300 from Sean, based on the fact that he's paying us for those items. If we were to put this as 0 and say he hasn't paid us anything, the balance will roll over to next month. So his balance will start off as 1,300. Then if we only had to pay him 1,300 next time, it would go to 0 because the two numbers would balance each other out. So you have a choice. Either the owner pays you because you don't want to wait for your money, or you allow that money to roll over to the next month and the next month and the next month and the next month until that debt is paid off. So we have some clients that build up debts of like 10, 20,000, and over the year, they come back down to 0. So at the moment, Kat, unfortunately, because we don't track it to that degree, we will not, when there's when they owe you money, we don't track it to that degree. So the best thing is that you clear it and you put a note, you put a task on their contact records to confirm that they actually owe the money still. And then for when that money comes in, you can clear that task off, and you know there doesn't need to be a correction before you run the next statement. So if they've agreed to pay in that month, you would need to track it within your account system, or you just simply add a task to the iPro contact, Sean Hop in this case, and then once that money's come in, I can clear that task off. It's a little bit of extra work, but running the task is a good way of doing it, and it makes sure that the next statement that you run is accurate for that particular owner. So again, so Neil, as I said, we don't go to that degree. We're not an account system. All we care about is the owner has paid you and the opening balance has gone back to 0. That's all we care about. And likewise, when we process the statement, we don't care if you've actually physically made that payment or not. So you could say you've paid, in as far as iPro is concerned, you could say you've paid them, but actually in reality you haven't pressed the button. So that's on you in your business to manage that. We don't go into that much detail, otherwise we'd be turning into a complete account system. Okay, so this is a good question here in terms of how we handle euros and sterling within the same account. And it really depends on your business model here. We have one client who does everything. All the owners are UK based, but their management company is in euros. So they have a sterling based statement, and we convert the euro expenses into sterling so that they then can deduct as normal, as I've shown you here, and they manage the owner payments purely in sterling. So that's one example. The second example is you could actually run two statements. You've got your euro statements and your sterling statements. So if an owner gets paid in sterling, they'll go on the sterling statement, and if an owner gets paid in euros, they'll go on the euro statement. So you can quite happily have the two in tandem. If you had charges in euros, and you didn't want to do the conversions, or you didn't have two management companies but your bills were in euros and then you were doing it in sterling, you would have to add your bill in sterling, but in the notes say that this was €100 and we've converted it to £90 or whatever it may be. So you would actually, on the bills and the invoices is where you would do your conversion. So you have to make a decision on which currency you're going to pay your owners in. And if you are going to pay some owners in sterling and some owners in euros, then you will have to do 2 statement runs every month. Okay, so there's a good question here. How do we handle the differences between the channels? So the key thing is when we do a booking, and this is why we recommend making sure that not everybody in your team has the ability to do this. It should always be a manager, should always be your super user who has the permissions to do this. This date here is critical to when they get paid. So currently this booking was made today on the 20th of May. And if we got paid on the 20th of May, so for example, I could set this to the 21st, and therefore this owner would get paid on the 21st of May, or when I run the the May statement, he would get paid, or she. If I then change this and say, well, actually the check-in date was the 2nd, I think it was, or the 6th, actually, let me just double check. Yeah, check-in was on the 6th. So if I actually set this to go to the 6th of June on the check-in date, now they'll get paid in the June statement. If you want to pay them as soon as the check-in date is, I go back to my previous point, that's absolutely fine, but you're then looking at having to run statements every single day to see which payments are falling due to the owners on that day. It's going to be far quicker, far more efficient for you to be running this on a monthly basis, and then working with the owners to explain that these are the rules that we can pay you on, therefore it's consistent, and you know you're going to get paid on the date and time we say you're going to get paid. Okay, so if an invoice gets missed, i.e. you put the wrong date on, we have a control in place that will update anything that's not cleared, and therefore it will appear in the next month's statement. But obviously when I did my test there, it runs overnight, so it hadn't picked it up. So basically the invoice will roll over to the next available statement. Ricardo, I've missed your 2 questions. I think the second said the value of our invoice plus bills, and then yeah, I'm not 100% sure what you're asking for here. I think we need to have a follow-up call at the end, or if we can just go through that at the end of this session, and then we can get to the bottom of it. But it's not 100% clear from your questions. So Lorraine, there's a couple of answers to this question. So I've got a question here. Can an owner be paid in euros and in sterling? So i.e. they have 2 bank accounts, one for the sterling bookings and one for the euro bookings. You can, of course, do it that way. But as far as the statement is going to be concerned, you have to manage it in one currency. So the workaround would be that you either have 2 properties, one in sterling, one in euros, and therefore if the guest pays in euros, you put it to the euro property, and if the guest pays in sterling, you put it to the sterling property. I would say that's probably a little bit overkill. What would probably be better is that you actually create the statements as normal. They're in sterling or euros, whichever way around they are. Yeah. So, and then you literally would pay based on the bookings that have come in. You would pay into the, you would, right, you would make two payments for that one statement. You'd make a sterling payment and you'd make a euro payment. So it'd just be an adjustment on that particular statement for you to then go and manually make those payments. As I said, iPro doesn't track you making the payments, so you can pay those, you can make those payments however you wish. You just tell iPro that you have made those payments. So if you click process statements, you are telling iPro that you have now paid the owners for those bookings and there is no further action needed, and everything is in order. If you don't process the statements, then you will not have the the payments will not be marked as paid. The other thing you can do for the euro payment ones, so for example, I'm in a booking here. We've got our owner balance due here. If I click pay, let's say this was in euros and not sterling, I can say that I've done a bank transfer payment directly to the owner. It was done today. If I click that, it will automatically send a payment receipt to the owner as well. I click save and exit. That booking is now paid for in advance, and therefore it will not tell me to pay that owner again in the statement. So it will be clicked off my list and it will show as a paid in advance statement. Okay, so good question here from bookings coming into the channel. So we are currently revising how we manage prices from the channel manager, because you're marking up different amounts. Everyone's doing different amounts and different amounts are coming back into the system. We have decided to make a global change so that iPro will always provide the correct amount back to the owner, irrelevant of which channel the booking comes through on. So that means that if you've marked up your prices by 18%, 20%, 15%, 5%, whatever it may be, let's say it's £1,000 on your website for this booking, and the price comes in as £983. Based on the website price, the owner should get £800. So when that booking comes in from the channel manager, we will put that the owner is due £800. Your commission would have reduced, therefore the tax would reduce slightly, but the net accommodation cost would be the same as if it came through on your website. So that's how we're going to control that. All of your extras that you've added, whether it be a damage waiver, a booking fee, a cot, pets, electricity charges, pool heating, hot tubs, air conditioning charges, etc. If you've got those items, they will all be allocated automatically within the booking. So you just need to make sure that they're configured correctly and mapped to the channel manager, but they will come through. That's not going to work on historical bookings, but new bookings come in will be allocated correctly against the extras, and the owners will always get the same net price as if the property was booked on your own website. Okay, so I've got a question here, which is a little bit like our annual statements. So we have the ability to run, we have the statements that you run every month, every week. If you're running your statements every 3 months, you can run these every 3 months. You don't need to run them every month. Likewise, you could run them every week if you wanted to. We haven't limited or locked it down to what you do. So you have that ability. If you were doing a 3-month summary of the statement, so you wanted to run them monthly, and then you wanted to do a 3-month summary, you can actually run a 3-month historical summary based on statements that have already run. So for example, this probably won't bring through much data. No, I didn't think it would. If I bring in Marie. Okay, so I have the bookings here. So this was just the bookings for the May one. If I run this for a set period, it will show me all of the income for those months that I've selected, as long as I've ran the monthly statement. So this only works if you are doing regular statements. And what it does is it compiles it into a report. And what we then have is we have a summary statement like so that will show you all of the income over that 3-month period. So yeah, that is a really good tool for the UK clients. This is the owner's tax year that you can run it for, and that's why we have the email all statements. So when you set the date, click email all statements, that will go and email every single owner with a copy of their annual statement that they can give straight to their taxman and do their tax return immediately. So again, this would work for any country. But hopefully it will answer your question about doing your 3-month statements. So the 179 tax form, Kate, if we can catch up with that afterwards, and then we'll go through, we'll pick that up on the report section as well, I believe. I think that's where you're going to get a lot of that information. So for me, that is the statements in a nutshell. There are some more advanced functionalities that that you may come across as you're using it, but if you follow that process, you will be able to efficiently and effectively run your monthly accounts for your owners and ensure that your owners are paid accurately, and you have a happy accounts team each and every month. So there's a few more questions. So while those questions are coming in, I'm just going to launch the poll. And we've got 10-15 minutes now. If you want to have your questions, put them onto the chat system, and we will see if we can go through them. Actually, one of the questions was impossible, and I think that was to the I think that was to the peaceful and easy statement run each and every month, and happy owners, because as I say, they always like to make sure that they are getting paid correctly, and as we know, they always forget why there was a discount added, or why they were being deducted this, or why they were being charged for that. But hopefully with a simple process, you may be able to get a couple of smiles from the accounts team. Hi there, Ricardo. So yeah, if you're happy for me to unmute the microphone, I can bring you into the call and we can have a look at your questions, and we can go from there. So let's add you into this now. Okay, so you should be able to unmute your microphone, and then we'll go through to your questions.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can indeed. How are we doing?
Right, thank you.
Good stuff.
And thanks very much. Did you get my email yesterday with assigning housekeeping resources to?
I did, thank you. Yeah, that was brilliant. So I'll have a look all through all that.
Okay. Okay, the issue here with monthly statements is that we have the services we provide. So obviously we have the commission on the bookings.
Yep.
We have tasks that we basically deal with, and for which we invoice, something like a call out, something like, I don't know, whatever case may be. So those are the charges we will make on our invoices. So we have our commission, we have a call out, we have whatever other services we provided. We then have another set of bills, which are bills sent to us, but already in the name of the owner, that we pay on behalf of the owner.
Okay.
So electricity, pool man, that if the owner contracts in direct, gardeners, same thing, if they contracted direct, any other third-party bills. Now,
Yep.
we cannot invoice these, because if we invoice these, we have to slap on VAT again. So on these, because they are already in the VAT number of the owner, what we will do is we will raise an invoice which has our commissions plus the tasks for the services we provided. So imagine there are 10,000 euros worth of bookings. Our commissions are, I don't know, 3,000, whatever, plus all the tasks, plus all the services. That leaves 7,000. And our invoice, so the VAT is only paid on the 3,000 that we charge and raising the invoice. Then from this, we have a purely financial deduction of the bills we have paid to third parties on behalf of the owner. But what I need to do is be able to put these into the bills without affecting the invoice, right? If I'm making myself clear.
Yeah, you are. So I think this is, it depends on how, what's the word I'm looking for? What you're saying is exactly how the feature has been built, but you don't, just from a legal perspective, you don't want it to appear on that invoice. I would potentially do 2 invoices for the same property, because we don't actually send them an invoice anyway, or you don't have to send them an invoice. And what you might just end up adding onto your invoice, I mean, again, it is an invoice. I mean, there's, you know, it is but you don't necessarily, no one actually needs to see this invoice. So for example, if I was going to go and do a new bill here, and I'm just going to do, rather than, so supplier will be our Madeira, for example, and then I would have an option here called prepaid bills, deduction for prepaid bills. And if that added up to my net cost, we're not going to do any charges on this. So actually my net cost was 1,000 and I'm going to charge them 1,000. That means there's no taxes, nothing. And this will just show then as a deduction on the statement to say, oh, we would have given you this, but we've already paid these bills in advance for you as well. So actually we're going to take that money back from this particular statement. So that is the exact example you've given there is exactly why we created the bills, because of that you do pay all these bills on behalf of the owner, and the bills are on the owner's name. If you want to have a true invoice and then have this deduction outside of that, you would have to create 2 invoices as far as iPro is concerned. So that's, I'm using iPro terminology, but really you could scrap the word invoice and just have it as a deduction, because that will come through. This is Yeti Retreat, which was Sean, wasn't it? So if I now go and run my monthly statement for June again, you'll just see deduction for prepaid bills. And that's all you'll see. And also we don't, on the statement, deduction for, oh, I do have invoice there. So I mean, if that was going to cause you any pain, maybe we could actually rename that, or there's something we can do there, but that would be the only mention of the invoice, that little bit there.
Yeah, the word invoice is not a problem, because obviously we have to invoice all our commissions on official Portuguese invoicing systems, not via iPro.
Okay.
Obviously.
So yeah, so it would be fine then. So you would just bring it in. So you could either list all the bills if you wanted to, because there's no tax or anything payable, or you can just group them and just say it's a deduction for all the bills that we've paid, and here's a copy of all the receipts. However you want to do it, that's your choice.
All right, that's great. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Lovely. Okay. I shall catch up with you tomorrow, Ricardo. Reference, well, maybe actually Friday. Actually, it won't be tomorrow. Reference the cleaning stuff, the management stuff.
Sure, no problem. Whenever you want.
Lovely. All right. Thanks very much. And thank you all very much for listening. And I will catch up with you all tomorrow.